So the Donald Trump job market looks to be very, very weak, and we just got a new jobs report that confirms that. Let me show you guys what's going on. It says payrolls at U.S. companies fall by most since 2023. This is coming from ADP because remember, we don't get government jobs data these days, as if you put out something that Trump doesn't like, he'll have you fired. And then we had the government shutdown. So it's a combination of things. These numbers then become more important because we're not anything else. And basically saying things are weak. Private hiring sank in November, ADP says. And then you also have this. U.S. private firms shed 32,000 jobs in November. So we're losing jobs. This is actually a surprise. They were expecting a 10,000 job gain to the upside, and it ended up being a 32,000 job loss, again, to the downside. So it's a surprise in the wrong direction. Let me show you guys the chart here. I mean, literally, you can see it. It's just the job market's weakening. And again, this is coming from ADP. Look at all the red bars. So that's the times when you're losing jobs, and the hiring is slowing even in jobs where you gain. The thing with this kind of stuff, unfortunately, it's affecting small businesses the hardest. And so this would be companies under 50 employees. I'll read it to you guys. It says, the job losses were led by smaller companies with fewer than 50 employees, which shed 120,000 posts. Okay. The report will boost the case for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates for a third time this year when its policy setting committee meets next week. So you're watching a couple different things here. You're watching, okay, where are the job losses? Where are the job gains? And then what's the Fed going to do? And, will the Fed cut rates because they're more concerned about unemployment and making sure that we can continue the borrowing, because it is USA. We're talking about like everything's based on debt. So make sure we can continue the borrowing and hopefully can encourage people to buy things and encourage people to hire. The thing is, though, if you're cutting too much, then what if you get runaway inflation? And then you could have theoretically runaway unemployment, runaway inflation, and no growth, or even negative growth, which I just say this, it could get really, really ugly out there. And I think going into next year, 2026, we'll probably see more firing. That's just what it looks like to me. We talked about before with some of the surveys that were coming back regarding Trump's tariffs, and companies are saying we may do that next year because we're going to see the full sort of what's the word to say, like the full impact of the tariffs. Let me read some more of this also. And this kind of tells you more about individual industries. So it says ADP said wage growth fell from 4.5% in October to 4.4% in November. So basically, are wages keeping up with inflation? That's essentially what we're talking about here. Now, this does depend, obviously, where you are. And from what I have seen in data before on this is that if you're in the upper wage growth, then you're keeping up with inflation. If you're in the lower wage, you're not keeping up. And this is unfortunate because it's a K-shaped economy. And then basically, rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's put in most simplest terms. When you look at individual industries, this is what it says. Construction groups shed, so losing, 9,000 jobs, and manufacturing 18,000. So we're losing jobs in construction and manufacturing. So 9,000 construction, 18,000 in manufacturing. While information and professional business services cut positions by 20,000 and 26,000 respectively. And then I guess the growth here then is education and health services, and leisure and hospitality posted respective gains of 33,000 and 13,000. That's what it says, a quote. Richardson said it had been, quote, a tough year for small business, in particular as consumers dialed back spending amid economic upheaval. It is those mom and pop Main Street companies, firms, small businesses, and establishments that are really weathering an uncertain macro environment and cautious consumer, right? So your small companies that are 50 people or less. The markets were up today because they're saying, oh, great, job market's bad. So therefore, Fed's going to cut rates and we go back to borrowing and we can raise all of our money for our data centers and our circular financing and get that all going. And it's like the whole thing's ridiculous because just, think about this scenario. Okay, so let's say Wall Street gets their way and OpenAI Anthropic, I think, is going to try to go public, and these type of AI companies, and maybe even Elon Musk, XAI will try to go public or whatever. And they're like, okay, so now we're going to try to get all this money into data centers, but the ultimate goal is to replace consumers. So there's going to be yet more losses. Or companies will be like, okay, we got to please our shareholders. We need to show that we're cutting costs, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to fire employees because, who needs those humans? And then we'll have, employees that are still with the company work harder. But hey, we'll give you an AI assistant. That's the plan. I mean, it doesn't really make sense in a consumer-based economy if people don't have jobs and you're watching this job shed. And the other thing that's kind of crazy, which just came out today, is the AI plan to replace you may not necessarily be going as well as they want it to go. So there's a bit of controversy with this one. This is, I'll read a headline and I'll explain it. Microsoft slips on report of lower demand for some AI tools. Okay. So basically there was this report, I think it was called From the Information. And they said that Microsoft lowered their expectations on how much they're going to sell. And then Microsoft comes out and says, no, that's untrue. So, I'll read it and then you guys can make up your mind who to believe. So it says right here, Microsoft shares slid after the information reported that the software maker has lowered expectations for getting business consumers to spend money on the cloud unit's marketplace for artificial intelligence models and agents. Okay. So the idea would be, and in this situation, how they define it is artificial intelligence models and agents. So, can I get a robot to replace someone, basically? And I guess according to the report, Microsoft tells their people, we're going to lower what we think it's going to be, what the sales are going to be, et cetera. I guess it's a multiple division. Again, this is coming from a report from Information. And I'll read Microsoft's response in a second here. But it says several divisions at Microsoft have lowered quotas for how much salespeople are supposed to increase sales of certain AI products after many of them missed their targets in the fiscal year that ended in June. The Information reported citing 2 salespeople in the Azure Cloud division. The unusual shift reflects how Microsoft is compensating for companies' resistance to pay for more AI, according to reports. It's like, we don't got any money. Yes, we're going to try to fire people and place them with robots, but we need to get money in the first place. So I guess theoretically, the Fed cutting rates will make it easier for companies to borrow more money, to fire more people, to hire more AI. I guess that's our plan. I know it's all crazy. There's a quote here from Microsoft. The Information story inaccurately combines concepts of growth and sales quotas. Okay, that's the emailed statement here from Microsoft. Aggregate sales quotas for AI products have not been lowered. So that's what they say. Yet the stock fell 3%. So I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Regarding the AI stuff, though, there is competition among companies. This was actually a really interesting one that just broke today, because I want to give you a different sense of what's going on in the job market. Apple design executive Alan Dye, poached by Meta in major coup, and basically a lot of top talent appears to be leaving Apple, some heading to Meta. And if you guys remember, I think their big designer before was Johnny Ives, and I think a lot of his people have left. If you remember all those old Apple commercials, you would know exactly who that is. And it's funny because I'm mentioning Apple. True story. I just wrote a blog post yesterday about this, and the basic gist of it is that my phone is old. I think got it back like 4 years ago, and I was looking to get a new phone. And I just be frank. My favorite phone ever was the Motorola Razr one. It was like the really cool flip phone. I used to play with it all day. It's just fun to flip a phone. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll get a Apple flip phone or whatever. And it's like $2,000 is what they're talking about. And Samsung just announced their flip phone yesterday. It's like a tri-fold thing, and that's gonna be like $2,000. And actually, I should say 2,000 plus. Better way to put it. So you can read my Substack about that. If you haven't subscribed already, you should check that out. And I mentioned this stuff because like the way things are shaping out is, I guess if you want to get money and you want to get business, you're gonna be a Trump, I guess. It's funny because the jobs report was saying that companies under 50 are struggling, right? It was like 120,000 posts gone kind of thing. Whereas here it says Donald Trump Jr. backed startup scores $600 million U.S. federal government deal. Great. So I guess if you're in this class, like the billionaire class, and you have the right connections, you're doing fantastic, and you're buying those $2,000, iPhones or Samsungs or whatever. And if you're curious on this particular one, it says here, a little known rare earth startup with about 30 employees has won a blockbuster funding deal from the Pentagon, right? 3 months after Donald Trump Jr.'s venture capital firm invested in the company. So you can easily see what's going on here. I asked you guys in the last video, could you imagine in your country, because we have an international community that watches this channel, could you imagine if this kind of situation happened where a kid of a politician got massive government contracts while they're in office? And this is what people said. I wanted to read it to some of the stuff. This is from Who Cares. It says, German viewer here. I remember one former defense minister of defense who allowed her son to ride with her in a military helicopter on an official trip. She was pretty incompetent anyway, but that was the final reason why she was removed from office compared to what's going on in U.S. ... Meaning that, this would be a major scandal in Germany. Is like having, your kid riding with you in a helicopter. I think they posted the pictures on Instagram or something like that. So not popular there. And we're not even talking about government contracts. We're just talking about this kind of stuff. Here's another one. Someone from Canada was saying, Canadian here, Bev Oda basically resigned because she was called out for her spending. She was known as a lady who bought super expensive orange juice on taxpayers' dime. I still find it comical. And I had to look that one up. I guess the orange juice was like $16, which is pretty expensive. And this was, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. But it happens if you buy, hotel orange juice. And it wasn't just the orange juice at $16. It was like, I guess she was using limousine service and staying in expensive places. And I think that was London, so it was on the government dime. And she ended up paying it back. But this is the kind of corruption that you'll have in other countries, and just compare it to what we have in USA. It is comical in comparison. Here's another one. I remember a huge controversy over sports club funding being issued to clubs associated with the Australian Conservative Party, aka Liberal Party coalition MPs. Whatever the U.S. is doing is off the charts and mirrors what some corrupt, SO countries do. And that's essentially where we're at in the USA, is like this kind of, crap. The job market is sinking. Small businesses are really, really hurting, right? As you can see the numbers, and effectively, it's like these big corporations are still going to, be pushing out mom and pop stores. I'll just say this. So I live here in Korea, as you guys know. And one of the things I really like about living here is like, there's so many mom and pop restaurants everywhere. Like they're everywhere. And it's healthy for the environment, healthy for the economy. I think it's really important for, it's not just Korea, it's not just USA, but just all around the world, to where like someone, if they want to, open up a business and do their own thing, they can. And it makes it like, if you have a system in place to where basically everything becomes Walmart, I'll put it in most simplest terms, everything becomes Walmart, right? Or you have supermarket chains in USA where everyone joins and just becomes one. It's not great. I'll be real with you, it's not great. And then, on top of that, then you're going to have no competition. And, then Trump wants to set up a tax system that basically benefits the wealthy and hurts the poor. Someone's writing a comment about they're in the Bahamas, and Bahamas is a good example because it's a tax shelter for, big corporations and wealthy individuals. And I think even the FTX crypto dude, their stuff was down there. And I remember when I first started talking about FTX, if you're a long-time viewer of my channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But when I first started talking about that, and I looked up the company, you could literally see the address. Bahamas, what the heck is that, right? And you'll see a lot of crypto stuff in these kind of places. But basically, when you're in these sort of situations, they don't structure the economy for everyone. They don't structure the tax system for everyone. It's just it's all a grift for your family members, effectively, right? So that's what you see with the Trump kind of stuff. And then at the moment, like, what could hold the Trumpers back from completely destroying USA, may actually be the markets. And it plays out in different ways. So, for example, this is one. Bond investors warned U.S. Treasury over picking Kevin Hassett as Fed chair. Some market participants worried candidate for top central job will be swayed by Trump on interest rates. So, basically, and it was funny. Someone wrote that people are afraid of getting trust. And this is a reference to what happened in UK, where, hey, we're going to do a bunch of tax cuts and we have no way to pay for it. So I guess therefore we're going to have to issue more bonds, and then all your bonds are going to go down because, we're basing everything on debt. But which could theoretically happen in USA, which is, it happens as it is now, the basic idea is like from Trump's point of view, okay, I'm just going to cut taxes as much as I can for my buddies. The numbers don't add up at all. I'm then going to brag that I have all this tariff money comes in, and that doesn't add up at all either. So I guess we're going to issue more, government debt and try to fund everything that way. And then nothing really makes sense anymore after that. And so, you could definitely get market pushback on that. Unfortunately, let me rephrase this. I'll put more positive. I was gonna say, unfortunately, like small businesses get crushed and they have no recourse. But I take that back, because you can sue and win. I mean, you'll see probably multiple lawsuits come from the Trump administration, be it small businesses or any number of companies that come out and can prove a case that they've been absolutely cheated by the Trump people. And I think the lawsuits will mount up for years, not only the Trump administration, but after when he gets out. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked here. And then when the bond thing situation with government borrowing or whatever, then you're dealing with like huge money like BlackRock, etc. So it's like, yes, I know things are bad, and you'll say, guys, I know I'm not, and you can see it, I can see it, you can see the job market weakening. But I want to say though is that not everyone wants like the whole system to go basically to just only a few people have jobs and everyone else is robots. I'm not the only one who can see it, and you're not the only one who can see it. Other people can see it too, that the Trump system that's in place right now is just completely unsustainable. The bubble's going to pop here, and we need to raise more awareness of what's happening and just try to tell you guys what's going on. So that's my thoughts. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you all in the next video.